In my recent review of The Drifter and Star Drifter, I noted that one of the things that makes the actions of that game seem more concrete is a map that shows the spatial relationships between the events that are happening that are randomly generated. It really sets apart The Drifter and Star Drifter from other adventure game books, and I really appreciated it there. A sense of place can make the events of a board game more real. And when things are randomized, especially having something to draw connections between those events can make a big difference in how engrossing it is. How much it creates an illusion of a continuous, cohesive narrative. One problem with a map on a game board for random adventures like that is that it's static. Even if events move around, wouldn't it be nice to have the locations on the map move as well? I found that this approach allows for more revelation, more surprise. It increases the tension of exploration. Will I find what I need on the next flip? And just plain variety. Also, you can often get away with a smaller box. I'm J. Allen Riker, horror author and solo board game fanatic. This is my top 5 list of board games with maps made of cards. Here, I'm even making a distinction between cards and tiles, even cardstock tiles, like say in Marvel United, because I really like the way that the games on this list put standard components to creative use. It's efficient, it often leads to a smaller box, and even a lower price. So we're going to start with an honorable mention: Forgotten Depths. In this incredibly beautiful game, you use cards to build the dungeon before you. The trick is that if there is an event or monster on the path on a given side of a card, you cannot continue the map in that direction. And if you find no suitable places to continue the map, you immediately lose. This creates a push your luck mechanic because you don't want to drop down and battle monsters when that turns out not to be the path you're going on. So you tend to push it out as far as possible. But also, you don't want to be able to not place a card and immediately lose. Forgotten Depths has multiple dungeon environments, getting stranger and more alien the deeper you go into the Forgotten Depths. And if this were the whole game, Forgotten Depths would have made the official list. Unfortunately, that's only half the game. The other half is the combat, where you drop down from the map-making game into a different game, and the combat is not fun. It's incredibly swingy and with a lot of unmitigable luck. But the reason that Forgotten Depths is still on the list is that it is just such a pretty game. But also, I found that because the two systems are so separate, that it's a good map-making system and event-triggering system for other like solo RPG game engines. I played several games of 4 Against Darkness where instead of rolling for rooms and monsters, I used Forgotten Depths, and it was a lot of fun. But half a fun game making this list wouldn't be fair to complete games. So we're going to move on to our number 5 game with a map of cards, Hand of Fate Ordeals. I love the art in this game. It's so different. It's a little bit cartoonish, but it's also very dangerous looking. And that plus a really good sale price is what initially led me to buy the game. It actually does come with a huge board and the game is in a really big box, but the board only has places to put the cards that represent locations. This card constructed map adds variety and a real sense of exploration as you walk along, flipping the tiles, wondering what you'll encounter. It's a deck building game where the different characters have very different strengths, literally having the potential to win in completely different ways, which adds a significant amount of variety. But the reason this is number 5 is that despite these positive traits, Hand of Fate Ordeals, I just feel like it plays like a multiplayer game where it's possible to do solo, but not ideal. In fact, the main solo mode for the game is only to be found in the special, as a Kickstarter exclusive, which I don't own. I play with some rules that I found on BGG. Still, the game has a lot of good qualities, and if you can find it at a good price, you might want to check it out. The number 4 game on our list doesn't actually have variable card placement, but it does lean very heavily on a sense of exploration, which already might have you able to guess what it is. Seventh Continent. These map cards are very specifically found in the game's filing cabinet in a way that causes some of the most complaints about the game. Personally, I don't mind fishing the cards out, and I really love the map cards, as despite that they have an intended placement, the sense of exploration is really the core of Seventh Continent, and you need to get down into those cards and really examine them for details and clues in order to find secrets and figure out how to proceed. The other complaint about the game is that it is punishingly difficult, and that the penalty for dying, which is having to start over, is too steep. Now, these critiques I do agree with, which is why it's not higher up the list. And I will only play with house rules for both of these issues. If you don't want to buy a game that you have to house rule, or if you don't play with house rules, then I don't blame you for skipping Seventh Continent for these reasons. But I do feel that it's a unique game experience, at least until this March 2024, when people started receiving their copies of the sequel, Seventh Citadel, which some people say has fixed the problems, some people say has the exact same problems, and some people say fixed the original problems while adding new problems. So I'm still waiting to see what the consensus is on that game. And honestly, I need to get Seventh Continent back to the table before I would decide to buy any more of it. The number 3 game on our list is an extremely popular game. I personally have chosen to go with the alternative, but I can't deny that it does special things, one of which is using a map made of cards to create a sense of location. That game is Arkham Horror, the card game. So I decided that between Marvel Champions and Arkham Horror, the card game, Marvel Champions is my game. I love the replayability of the scenarios because they're boss fights, and I want to see how each hero stacks up against every villain. I'm not really big into narrative campaign games, which Arkham Horror definitely is. But though I have a lot of Marvel Champions, I have to admit that the battles, which are the absolute center of the game, I mean, that is the game, can feel ungrounded in both space and time, while the scenarios in Arkham Horror feel like they are happening on a timeline in a specific place, and I really do love that about the game. Arkham Horror, the card game, is a deck construction game, not to be confused with the deck builder, where you send investigators out to lose their minds against the worst horrors of the Cthulhu mythos. There's a strong push your luck element, as you never know how badly the Chaos Bag is going to punish you when you attempt to pass a skill test. And a lot of people really like the thrill and drama that this creates. If you are interested in Arkham Horror, the card game, Fantasy Flight has been re-releasing it in an easier to buy format for the past couple of years, and I actually think there is still some coming out if you're watching this in early 2024, and it's very easy to get your hands on now in the new way that it's all bundled up. The number 1 game on this list is one that I'm pretty sure I haven't included on any list, even though I like it quite a lot. Part of the reason that I enjoy it is that you never know where the emergent narrative of the adventure is going to take you. And a big part of that is the variable card map. And that game is Gloom of Kilforth. So in Gloom of Kilforth, you choose between many varied hero classes. Then you adventure across a map constructed of cards, having encounters based on the environment type. The art in this game is a little bit polarizing. The characters kind of look like they're from the covers of romance novels, with being extremely beautiful and with glistening pecs and heaving bosoms, which is a little weird just because the style of the art doesn't seem to highlight any particular aspect of the game itself that is sexy. Still, I stand by my statement in a previous video that I'd rather have an interesting looking game than a bland, generic fantasy look. And while I don't think that I would want every game to look like the Killforth series, I actually really enjoy it here. But like I said, it can be polarizing. So as a game where a lot of tension comes from the need to efficiently explore, the variable map really adds a lot. I find the combat to be really thrilling. You have to take it slow at the beginning of the game. If you think that you're going to charge in, swinging your sword around, just stomping people, you're going to lose. And it's going to be very frustrating because as you take damage, you lose actions. You will spend a lot of time at the beginning hiding and building up your strength and resources. The combat is fast, it's deadly, and you get to pull together bunches of dice and match keywords, which are a couple things that I really like. The keywords also aid in emergent narrative if you are taking the time to think about how they're working together. Keyword density matters a lot. As the difficulty of success goes up, the less frequent the required keywords can be found throughout the deck. Sometimes this can feel a bit unfair, but I get that's just part of the thrill of the game. Are you going to last until you find the last card with the keyword that you need? I know that they have some rules change some of these things to address this when combining games, since that could really throw off keyword density. I haven't tried it yet myself. Gloom of Killforth is the only entry that I own. I definitely want to get this game to the table again soon. I would consider, because I think that the variable map is one of the big strengths here, and a variety of encounters that you can have, positive and negative, that really make it feel like you're on an adventure. I think that having a couple of the games and mixing them together could really extend the play life of this game. So before we get to our number one game, I want to take just a brief moment here to take a look at a solo board game channel that I love a lot and that I think that you all should check out. And that is Tabletop for One. This channel is kind of special in that one thing that Daniel Anderson does is he examines the role that board games can play in mental health. I think that's something many of us can identify with, and he just loves games. He's very positive. He is so willing to help on his channel and on Facebook. And his videos just always put a smile on my face. His presentation is so smooth and calming. It's just like Tabletop for One, and in my view, is one of the delights of the internet. You should definitely check it out. Okay, so Gloom of Killforth, I really like it, with bunches of keywords and its handfuls of dice. That sounds a lot like my number one game with a map made of cards. A game that I've mentioned several times, and that is Apocrypha Adventure Card Game. I talk about this game a lot. Part of the reason is just that I love it, and part of it is that it deserved much better than it got. It's a great game, and though it came out after the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, in actuality, it used the system first. This is the game that adventure card system was invented for. And I think that the system is implemented in Apocrypha better. I like the dice pool better, just using D6 and using the amount of successes to judge whether you achieve your combat roll or your skill check. I think that it's easier to estimate for or to straight up calculate the successes. And I also just find the world to be a lot more interesting than the generic fantasy world to be found in Pathfinder, because the world of Apocrypha is like a contemporary dark urban fantasy setting, and it's just a lot less common in board games. Unfortunately, the game is very difficult to learn, both because the system is so novel and because the rule book was not well written. There have been some revisions. I myself wonder how easy it is to explain the rules in words. So that is part of the reason why, unfortunately, I think that Apocrypha didn't get the reception that it deserved and kind of died an early death. Even though the game didn't get its due, we did get a full 100 scenarios to play through. So I have to say that it's a rare game that you play 100 times. So maybe my longing for a present that didn't happen isn't necessary. In each of those scenarios, you build a deck of encounters with a specific balance that goes with each of the specific locations that are set aside for that scenario. The game reminds me of Arkham Horror, the card game, in several ways, one of which is that the card map is fixed per adventure. So instead of adding random variability with the card map, it allows the game creators to give you planned scenario variability, much more than if you had a fixed board. So they can make these scenarios very different because they know exactly how to balance it. That's kind of always a trade-off. When everything is random, then everything has to either be kind of crazy swingy or flattened out. So the locations in an Apocrypha scenario match the loosely told story, aiding your imagination and bringing together the threads of the locations, the creatures, and the keywords all together to make an emergent narrative. And then also the scenario description sentence, which is this brilliant and very strange way of setting the rules for each scenario by creating a sentence of clauses that can be found on different cards that give you more details. It's so different that it's hard to explain without showing it in action, but I don't think it was even necessary. It is just an awesome thing that we get to see that makes the game seem even more clever. So like I said, one of the main flaws to Apocrypha, the adventure card game, is that it's difficult to learn. It's also time consuming to set up and break down each scenario. The first problem can be solved, or was solved for me, by buying the Pathfinder adventure card game app and learning the system from it, as it will just, force your hand to do the correct thing, something that we don't get in board games. I didn't buy the Pathfinder adventure card game app with the idea that it would teach me how to play Apocrypha. I bought it before I knew that Apocrypha existed, and I just played it because it was fun and it was a very cheap way to get the content, and completely eliminated the problem of setup that I had heard people complain of. But because I had experience with it, when I came to Apocrypha, I had a very easy time learning just the few extra things that you need to know. So the second problem of the amount of time that it takes to set up just is what it is. It's probably on par with Eon's End. It probably plays, any given scenario plays a little bit faster. So then it's like, I think setup to playtime is a ratio that we like to see at a certain place. And it's pretty off kilter here. But the game is, honestly, it is brilliant, and the core box is not very expensive, and I would suggest snagging it and giving the game a try if you're at all curious. So those are my top 5 favorite games with maps made of cards. If you have any favorites, go ahead and drop them in the comments. At some point, I'm probably going to make another video of variable maps made of tiles. So if you're shocked and scandalized by some obvious omission here, remember that that was one of the considerations of this list. But until next time, have a great rest of your day, and keep gaming solo. Mic test. Mic test.